Is it time to undo the top two? This is John Fleischman with Does It Matter.com, where all we do is talk about California politics all the time. For people that have been involved in politics only a short period of time, you wouldn't know that before we had this top two election system in California, there was another way. It was a better way. It was the right way. And it was called a party primary system. So before the passage of Prop 14 back in 2010, before that, we had a system in place for partisan office where basically every single political party had a primary. So if you were registered in a political party, your ballot would have the candidates running to become the nominee of your party. So whether you were Democrat, Republican, Peace and Freedom, Independent, Libertarian, I should say American Independent, Libertarian, etc., when you voted, you had your partisan ballot in there. And then what would happen is the winner of each of those primaries would go on to the general election where the voters would have choices that ran a broad spectrum of beliefs and ideas because, of course, our political parties have a broad spectrum of beliefs and ideals. So that's where you had voter choice in November was amongst those things because, of course, in America, we're organized as a party system. We pretty much always have been. You know, political parties allow people who have similar ideas and similar interests, but they aren't all the same, to at least come together, to work together in the general direction that they all want to go. And so who doesn't like the primary system? People that were trying to seek more, I guess, moderate candidates, ostensibly, thought that if you move to a system that elevated the top two vote getters, you put every single candidate, regardless of political party, on one big ballot, and that if you ended up in a situation where two candidates of the same political party went on to the general election, the theory as it would go is that clearly, like, for example, if two Democrats went, well, then all the Republicans would vote for the more moderate Democrat. And if two Republicans went, then all the Democrats would vote for the more moderate Republican. And in doing so, the passage of Prop 14 in 2010 would usher in a new era of more moderation. That has totally not been the case. Those of us that opposed it at the time opposed it, arguing that all this thing really does is make elections a heck of a lot more expensive and totally clamp down on the ability of political parties to drive a process. And so we were right. So ask yourself this question if you've been following politics since, almost 15 years ago. Do you feel that politics in California has gotten more moderate? I don't. It's gotten more extreme. And in fact, the people that are really benefited by this open primary system, this top two system, are the people that have a lot of money, because you have to run once and then you have to run again. Now, we've had some examples of situations where two Republicans and two Democrats advance in a statewide election. The one that I could think of that's the most telling was when Kamala Harris and Loretta Sanchez, both Democrats, one the current sitting state attorney general, the other a Democrat in Congress. Arguably, Sanchez was a little bit more moderate than the very progressive, we think that inmates should get free sex change operations Harris. But Harris kicked butt because she raised so much more money. Sanchez ran out of money after the primary and, went into the general election on fumes. And so there it showed that it was who had the money dominates this system, not who's more moderate and who's conservative. The other thing that we've noticed with the passage of this measure is what's called the undervote. I can tell you now, if you look at a situation where Republicans are faced between the choice of voting for one Democrat versus another Democrat, you're forgetting there's another option called not voting at all. And that happens a lot. And so what you really get is voter disenfranchisement in the general election when there's no candidates on the ballot that remotely believe like you believe. It's just simply not a good system. It doesn't work well. For those people that need an explanation, by the way, the office of president is not included in this system. You do get a closed ballot for president in California because party rules dictate nomination of delegates. And you don't really directly elect a president, right? You elect delegates that go to a convention who vote. So anyways, all I would tell you now is there's a new measure underway, a new effort underway, stop the top two, or undo the top2.com. Democrat Steve Maviglio and my friend, former California Republican Party Chairman Ron Naring are heading that up. Undo the top2.com. You should go check it out. But let's have a dose of political reality. The only way the top two is getting undone, it requires it getting on the ballot as a constitutional amendment. The only way it's getting on the ballot as a constitutional amendment is either by a boatload of money being raised to gather signatures or 2/3 of the legislature placing it on the ballot. which, with all due respect to my friend Ron, it's really on the Democrats. They're going to have to decide enough is enough. And maybe they're scared with Bianco and Hilton potentially making the top two, which I don't think was ever going to happen, but it certainly became a big narrative. Maybe that's enough to cause people to want to change the system. I hope so, because the top two system sucks. It's really bad. It's really terrible. And we need to really get rid of it and go back to the old system of party primaries, and then voters having a complete choice, not a choice between oatmeal and vanilla on the ballot, or worse yet, significant numbers of voters looking at the ballot and seeing nobody that they agree with. That's what I got to say. So go check it out at undothetop2.com.